Say it again! Ethan's voice cracked through the clinking glass and scattered laughter. Go on, give me financial advice, sweetheart. The restaurant froze. Maya's pen slipped from her hand. Her chest rose, steady and defiant. All right, she said softly. Sell your soul, it's the only thing you haven't cashed yet. And for the first time that night, the millionaire couldn't breathe. Now, let me tell you how this incredible story unfolded. Subscribe, share your heart in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from because your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. The Silver Palms restaurant glittered like money itself, glass chandeliers, brushed steel tables, and a low hum of people pretending to be more important than they were. Outside, Scottsdale's December heat still pressed against the windows, making the city lights shimmer like melted gold. Maya Brooks moved between tables with the quiet precision of someone who'd learned not to draw attention. Her smile was perfect, her voice even, her mind somewhere else entirely. Every "can I get you anything else?" carried the practiced rhythm of survival. She'd been here for 3 years since her startup collapsed, since her father's illness drained what savings she had left, since she'd swapped her business blazer for a server's apron. People didn't see her story. They just saw the uniform. Tonight, the dinner crowd was full of Scottsdale's wealthy elite. Maya recognized most of them. She'd memorized orders, names, favorite wines. But when he walked in, she paused. Ethan Cross. The man who'd bought half of downtown real estate last year. His name came with headlines and sharp smiles. He was taller than she imagined, tan from golf courses, dressed like casual arrogance. He sat at table 14, back to the window, eyes on his phone. Cross. Party of one, she confirmed, forcing the professional warmth into her tone. Looks like it, he muttered, not looking up. Water. Sparkling. And whatever's good. She nodded, jotting notes she didn't need. He had the air of a man used to people serving him without words. When she returned with his drink, he glanced up for the first time and noticed her. Noticed the sharpness behind her calm. You ever get bored here? He asked suddenly, swirling the glass. Sometimes, she replied, meeting his gaze. But bored isn't always bad. He smirked, leaning back. You sound like someone who's settled. Her pen hovered over the notepad. Or someone who's patient. That caught him off guard. The smirk twitched. Minutes later, as she brought his entree, his friends arrived, 2 men in suits, laughter like expensive whiskey. Ethan's tone shifted, louder now, for their amusement. So, tell me, Maya, he read her name tag with a mock bow. What's your best financial advice for a guy like me? The table erupted in laughter. She froze, dish in hand. Every instinct said ignore it, smile, move on. Tips mattered more than pride. But something in his voice, something lazy, cruel, assuming cut too deep. She placed the plate down slowly, meeting his eyes. My advice, she said softly, her voice barely above the music. Stop confusing wealth with worth. One fades when the market drops, the other doesn't. The table went silent. Even Ethan blinked, uncertain if he'd just been insulted or enlightened. His friend coughed. Damn, she got you there, man. Maya turned and walked away before he could respond. Her hands trembled, not from fear but release. Behind her, Ethan stared at his untouched food. Something heavy settled in his chest. Maybe it was the tone in her voice. Maybe it was how certain she sounded. Or maybe, for the first time in years, someone hadn't been impressed or intimidated by him. Have you ever said something out of pride and realized too late it revealed more about you than the other person? Comment your thoughts below. The storm rolled in just after 9. Arizona storms didn't ask for permission. They broke the heat in violent bursts, wind howling across the desert. Inside the Silver Palms, lights flickered once, twice, and then darkness. A chorus of gasps, followed by the clatter of dropped forks and a child's cry from the corner table. The music died mid-note. The only light came from cell phone screens and the faint glow of emergency bulbs by the exit. Everyone, stay calm, the hostess called out. It's just a temporary outage. Maya froze beside the coffee machine, heart hammering. She hated storms ever since the night the power went out at the hospital. The night her father's heart monitor had flatlined. She swallowed hard, breathing steady. A flashlight beam cut through the dimness. Ethan Cross stood up from his table, holding his phone's light high. "Anybody know what's happening?" "No, sir," Maya said, forcing her voice level. "I think the whole block's out. The generator will kick in soon." He gave a short, impatient laugh. "So, we're trapped in a fancy restaurant with no power. Great. You'll survive," she said before she could stop herself. He turned to her, the glow catching her expression. A smirk tugged at the edge of his mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. "Guess it's just you and me. Waitress, philosopher," he said. "No audience." She crossed her arms. That wasn't philosophy. That was truth. He leaned back in his chair, studying her in the shadows. "You really don't like me, do you?" "I don't know you," she said simply. "But I don't like how you talk to people." The honesty landed like a punch. Ethan looked away, then chuckled quietly. "Fair. I talk to people like I don't need them. Do you?" He exhaled through his nose, a bitter sound. "I used to think so." Silence fell again, thick, intimate. Around them, waiters guided customers with candles, laughter replacing panic. But in their little corner, it felt like another world. "Why do you stay here?" he asked finally. "You're too sharp for this place." Her jaw tightened. "Because life doesn't always care how sharp you are." "That's not an answer." She sighed. "I had a business once, a startup, financial planning for low-income families. It failed. Investors pulled out. I lost everything, including my apartment. So, yeah. Now I'm here." He blinked, surprised. "You? A financial planner? Funny, right?" she said bitterly. "Guess I gave myself the wrong advice." He frowned. "What happened?" She hesitated. No one had asked that in years. "I trusted someone. My partner. He embezzled funds and vanished. The fallout destroyed the company. My dad got sick at the same time. I couldn't recover fast enough." Ethan stared down at his glass. "Damn." "Yeah," she said quietly. "So, when you mock someone for being a waitress, remember, not everyone's story fits your assumptions." He looked at her then, not like a man assessing, but like someone seeing for the first time. The arrogance in his face faltered. "Guess I deserved that," he murmured. "No," she said. "You needed that." The generator hummed to life suddenly, the lights flickering back on. The world snapped back to motion, clinking plates, conversations resuming, servers rushing to tables. But for Ethan and Maya, something had shifted. He leaned forward. "You know what's ironic? I've lost more money than most people will ever make. But the thing that hurts most isn't the money, it's realizing I don't have one person who'd stick around if it were gone." Her eyes softened. "Maybe that's your real bankruptcy." He gave a slow, humorless smile. "You really don't hold back, do you?" "You asked for advice again," she said. He laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "Touché." For the next few minutes, they talked not as server and customer, but as two tired souls dissecting life. He told her about the divorce, the betrayal that left him guarded. She shared stories of her father teaching her how to dream big despite scarcity. Every word carved out new understanding between them. Finally, as she cleared the empty plates, he said quietly, "You know, you could start again." "With what?" He tapped his temple. "With that mind. You don't forget what you know, you just forget that it still matters." She stared at him, uncertain whether it was pity or sincerity. "You sound like you're trying to convince yourself." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I am." As she turned to leave, he called out, "Maya?" She paused. "For what it's worth," he said, voice lower, almost hesitant, "that advice you gave earlier, I think it was the first honest thing anyone said to me in years." Her throat tightened unexpectedly. She nodded once, unable to speak. Outside, the rain had stopped. The smell of wet desert air drifted through the open doors, dust, sage, and something like renewal. She looked back at him one last time before heading to the back room. And for a fleeting second, she saw not a millionaire, but a man just as lost, just as human. Can one genuine conversation between two strangers really change the course of their lives? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. The next night, the Silver Palms buzzed with its usual rhythm, expensive laughter, designer perfumes, clinking glasses. The storm had passed, but something in Maya hadn't settled. She'd replayed that conversation a dozen times while folding napkins, wondering why Ethan Cross of all people had left her thinking. When she walked into the dining room, he was there again. Same table, same seat, alone. Their eyes met, and for a moment, she hesitated. Then she straightened her apron and approached with careful calm. "Evening, Mr. Cross," she said, her tone light. "Ethan," he corrected gently. "Please." "And water's fine for now." She nodded, jotting it down though she didn't need to. His voice had changed, quieter, respectful. He studied her as she turned to leave. "You look different tonight." "Maybe it's just the lighting," she said. He smiled faintly. "No. You're standing taller." Something inside her wanted to laugh and maybe, a little, to believe him. As she refilled his glass, two familiar figures appeared. The same friends from that humiliating night. They greeted him loudly, pulling up chairs. "Ethan Cross back at it again," one of them roared, slapping his back. "Man, you living here now or what?" Ethan chuckled uneasily. "Just dinner." Maya forced a polite smile, ready to retreat, but one of the friends spotted her. "Hey, isn't this the philosopher Waitress?" Ethan froze. "Let it go, Tom." Tom grinned. "Nah, come on, what was it?" she said again. "Stop confusing wealth with worth, that was gold, man." The table burst into laughter. Maya felt her cheeks flush, the heat crawling up her neck. "Hey," Ethan said, his tone sharp now. "That's enough." But Tom kept going, waving his fork like a mic. "Maybe she's right. We should hire her to give us motivational speeches." Lesson 1. Gentlemen, don't be rich, be righteous. Another round of laughter. Something inside Maya snapped. She placed the tray down, her hand trembling not from fear, but from rage and humiliation. "You think it's funny?" she said, her voice steady but cutting through the noise. "You think serving people makes me less than you?" The laughter faded. Ethan's throat tightened. "Maya." "No," she said sharply. "You asked for advice, remember? Here's some more. Learn to be decent without needing applause. You might actually feel something real for once." Her voice echoed through the stunned restaurant. Every head turned. Ethan's friends shifted uncomfortably. One muttered, "Geez, she's sensitive." Maya's jaw clenched. She pulled off her apron, untying it with trembling fingers. "I quit." Ethan stood quickly. "Maya, don't." But she was already walking toward the back door. The slam of it reverberated through the silence that followed. For a long moment, Ethan didn't move. His friends stared at him, uncertain. "Man, she's got a mouth," Tom muttered. Ethan turned to him, eyes like steel. "You're an idiot." "What?" "You heard me." He threw down his napkin and walked out. Outside, the desert air was cool and sharp. Maya was already at her car, fumbling with the keys. "Maya," Ethan called, jogging across the parking lot. She stopped, but didn't turn around. "Don't." He slowed, chest heaving. "I didn't mean for that to happen, didn't you?" Her voice cracked. "You think because you didn't say the joke yourself, it makes you different from them." His mouth opened, but no words came. "You had a chance to show me you were better," she said softly, "and you didn't." "I tried." "No, Ethan, you hesitated. That's what people like you do. You hesitate to stand up unless it costs you nothing." Her words hit him harder than he expected. "Maya, I'm sorry," he said finally, voice raw. "I was trying to protect you." "By staying quiet?" she interrupted. "That's not protection, that's convenience." A long silence fell between them, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. He took a step closer, his voice dropping. "You're right. I messed up. I keep messing up. I don't even know how to talk to people anymore without hiding behind something. She turned then, eyes glistening in the dim parking lot light. Then stop hiding. I don't know how. Her voice softened. Then learn. Because the world doesn't need another man who thinks power excuses cowardice. She unlocked her car door, climbed in, and drove off without another word. Ethan stood there, rain from a distant sprinkler hitting the pavement around him, the smell of damp concrete and regret filling the air. For the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful, he felt small, human. That night, lying awake in his sprawling Paradise Valley home, Ethan replayed her words on a loop. Learn to be decent without needing applause. He laughed bitterly to himself. Guess I really did get financial advice after all, he muttered. But the ache in his chest said it was worth more than anything in his portfolio. If you were Ethan, would you have chased after her or walked away in shame? Be honest. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. 2 weeks passed. The winter sun over Scottsdale, Arizona hung low and warm, painting the streets gold. At the Silver Palms, life moved on, new waitstaff, new faces, but Ethan Cross hadn't returned. Not once. He'd vanished from the restaurant scene, from parties, even from the gossip columns that once fed on his every move. Maya didn't care. Or at least, that's what she told herself. She'd picked up extra shifts at a local community center downtown Desert Bloom Youth Hub helping teens with career planning and budgeting. It was the one place she still felt useful, teaching kids the lessons she'd learned the hard way. One evening, she stayed late after the workshops ended, wiping down the whiteboard as the sun dipped behind the cactus-lined horizon. The door creaked open. "Sorry, we're closed," she called without looking up. "I was hoping for some financial advice," a familiar voice said softly. Maya froze. Her heart stumbled before catching its rhythm again. She turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, no suit, no bravado, just jeans, a gray hoodie, and something vulnerable in his eyes. She set the marker down slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but I needed to say thank you." "For what?" "For embarrassing me. For making me see what kind of man I was becoming." She crossed her arms, guarding herself. "You had to humiliate me to figure that out?" He shook his head. "No. Watching you walk away did that. I deserved it." Maya studied him for a moment. He looked different. His eyes weren't restless anymore. "So what now, Ethan? You looking for redemption points?" He smiled faintly. "No, just a chance to tell you I listened." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "I went back to my office. I looked at everything I owned, companies, assets, buildings, and I realized I've never built anything that actually helped anyone." Her expression softened, but her voice stayed guarded. "And what do you plan to do about that?" He handed her the paper. It was a proposal. At the top, the title read, "Second Chances Cafe." Maya blinked, her lips parting. "What is this?" "A business plan," he said quietly. "Yours, if you want it. I bought a small property off North Scottsdale Road, good foot traffic, old diner space. I want to help you start over, not as charity, as a partner." She stared at him, torn between disbelief and instinct. "Why would you do that?" "Because you taught me what worth actually means," he said. "And I'm done spending my life on things that don't." Silence hung in the air, charged and fragile. Maya looked down at the paper again, her heart pounding. Her name, Maya Brooks, owner and operator, was printed in bold letters. "You really think a waitress and a billionaire could run a cafe together?" she asked quietly. He chuckled softly. "No, but I think two people who finally learned what matters could." Her eyes filled, but she blinked them clear. "You don't get to fix what happened with money, Ethan." "I'm not trying to," he said gently. "I'm trying to fix it with faith. In you." The words hit her harder than she expected. For a long time, neither spoke. The hum of an air conditioner, the faint rattle of the desert wind, everything seemed to pause around them. Finally, Maya exhaled, the tension leaving her shoulders. "You really don't quit, do you?" He smiled. Not when something finally feels real. She laughed softly, shaking her head. You're impossible. But learning, he replied. She hesitated, then walked toward him, the sound of her sneakers echoing softly in the quiet hall. She stopped just in front of him, close enough to see the lines on his face that money had never erased. You want advice again? She asked, her tone half teasing. He tilted his head, smiling faintly. Always. She looked him dead in the eye. Don't spend your life trying to buy forgiveness. Earn it by showing up, he nodded. Starting now. The weight of sincerity in his tone cracked something inside her, something she hadn't realized was still locked. For the first time in years, Maya let herself believe in possibility again. 6 months later, the scent of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon filled the air. The small cafe off Scottsdale Road glowed with the soft warmth of new beginnings. A handmade sign hung above the door, Second Chances Cafe. The opening day crowd filled every seat, families, workers, students, locals. On the wall hung a photo of Maya's late father with a quote beneath it, "Worth isn't what you own, it's what you give." Behind the counter, Maya moved with practiced grace, smiling genuinely this time. Her business license was framed near the register. Ethan sat in the corner booth, working on a laptop, dressed casually unrecognizable from the man who once mocked her. When their eyes met across the room, she nodded in acknowledgement. No longer resentment, just mutual respect. A teenage boy from the youth center walked up to her. "Miss Brooks, how'd you get the money to open this place?" She smiled, glancing toward Ethan. "Someone finally took my financial advice." The boy laughed. "What'd you tell him?" She leaned down, her voice soft but sure. "To invest in people, not things." As she stood, the desert light poured through the window, illuminating the cafe in gold. Ethan watched her, quiet pride in his eyes. He raised his cup slightly, a silent toast to the woman who'd changed everything without ever asking for anything. Outside, the hum of life carried on, cars passing, laughter in the distance, the smell of bread baking next door. But inside Second Chances, it felt like time had folded back on itself, chaos turned to calm, pride to peace. Maya looked out the window and whispered, more to herself than anyone, "Guess sometimes, even the richest man needs saving." Ethan smiled faintly. "And sometimes," he said, joining her by the counter, "the waitress becomes the teacher." The two of them stood side by side, the hum of the espresso machine filling the silence, proof that redemption isn't found in fortune, but in the courage to change. If someone once underestimated you, what would you say to them today? Share your answer in the comments, and remember, every day is a second chance. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If even a single moment, a look, or a word touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what part made you feel the most. Your words, your support, they're what keep this family of stories alive. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The next story is even deeper, more powerful, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Click the video on your screen, your next story begins there.